Welcome back to Sunday Nation. I'm Bankole Thompson. My guest is Dr. Nikolai Vitti, General Superintendent of the Detroit Public Schools Community District, here talking to us about the state of the district and public education on the fiscal accountability, fiscal well-being. So the procurement process is now well in place with the guardrails for financial stability and integrity.
Absolutely. I think the next step now is to create better equity. So there is a commitment that I think the school district has to have to contract with
who's accessing those opportunities?
Yeah, right.
And
I think
as opposed to just the big boys.
Correct. And I think that there's more work to be done there. So I think that more small businesses, more Detroiters, more black-based companies need to have better access to those companies or to those contracts.
Right.
And so I think we've done a better job of having workshops, informing of the process, even paying people on time. Before this administration, people weren't paid. So now we track when the contract is executed, how many days before the invoice. We have data, we report that to the finance committee.
So if a small business has a contract with you guys, they probably run out of business. They'll run out of, they will probably bite the dust before they even get paid by the district.
Right, and mechanisms to ensure that the services even take place. That wasn't in existence. So, if you're a business owner and you're providing a service, you have to document that service that occurred, and then we pay you. We didn't have systems for that. We didn't even have clear contracting services. But I do think the next step is to diversify the contracting base and also lead to more subcontracting. So, the big companies that have the infrastructure, they have the know-how to bid and the labor, we can do more subcontracting with some of the smaller businesses so their capacity can be built to then one time get those larger
insist
contracts.
that, they have to be, minority, MBE and so forth.
Correct. Yeah.
We cannot have this conversation without talking about curriculum. It's very important. It's central to the success of any district. Mm-hmm. Let's look at the curriculum of the district in terms of where it is before you came and where it is now.
Well, outside of what I'll tell you,
yeah.
When I first walked schools, I was just angry when I saw the materials being used because they were so outdated. I could see that as an educator. And in large urban school districts.
I remember books
successful.
that were kept at a warehouse on the east side somewhere. Millions of dollars were paid for those books, but they were kept at a warehouse. But go ahead.
Well, not only that,
before you came.
yeah, under the Obama administration, there was a move to have national standards where, regardless of the zip code city you were in, you had to teach math in 6th grade at a certain level and certain standards. The district didn't adapt curriculum that matched those standards, and we did an outside audit, so it wouldn't be about me, showing that was the case. And we found that the curriculum was 2 to 3 years below what children should be exposed to. So then we did a proposal process. We had teachers sit on a committee to be trained on how to analyze quality curriculum and then pick that. So we did that, then we trained teachers and we started to implement. And in only 1 year we showed the improvement because we know our student can do better if they're exposed to grade level curriculum. So since then, the board passed an anti-racist commitment that all of our curriculum would be reviewed, analyzed through an anti-racist lens. So we started with social studies. We did that last year to look at unbiased aspects of the curriculum. Different language that was used or examples that were given. Identify those, take those pieces out, even though it's grade level, and insert more a curriculum that better represents our students and the community. We also did a separate project with Detroit historians to add curriculum at the elementary level that was Detroit-based, to talk about the history of the city, the history of its people, so it's embedded in the curriculum. We still have work to do, but that anti-racist commitment starts with social studies. We're going to move then to English language arts, even math and science, so that even what is not explicit can be identified by experts to make sure that our curriculum is more equitable.
It would be given that the city's geographic location here, it would be a given that the Detroit Public Schools curriculum would actually be a leader when it comes to a curriculum that speaks to inclusiveness, racial equity and so forth.
I think when you look at that anti-racist commitment and the analysis that's happening, that is cutting edge, and that is we are one of the few districts that have committed to that work. And there are other districts, especially even in Michigan, that are recognizing that work and want to adopt our process to do that.
Let me ask you this question, and you know, I realize you're not the governor or the president or the mayor, but your take on this banning of books that's happening around the country as an educator, what do you think?
It's disgusting. You know, even within our own district, we have a process where if a parent objects to certain materials, whether they think it's, you know, not age appropriate or sensitive, we can have an opt-out where you can say as a parent, I'm not comfortable with that book. And then what we do is find an alternative book, and then the student reads that book and does assignments based on that book. I think that's appropriate. But when we get into banning book like The Bluest Eyes and things like that, we're going on a road that is about fascism, censorship, and the antithesis of what education is all about. And it's a political football, it's a political tool, just to divide people and confuse people about the real issues in this country.
Has there been any requests in the district about banning books from?
From some parents.
Okay.
And so those have been...
Recently?
Not in the last couple of months.
Okay.
There were some questions asked right before the pandemic hit, if I remember right, and then we established that process where if a parent objected, then there would be a committee of teachers that would review the objection, look to see if it's valid or not, and at the minimum send a letter to families saying that this book is deemed controversial. If you want an alternative, we can grant you one, but not banning books.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you look at the district, though, where it is right now, if you step back and look at it on the outside, what do you see now that is so different that you think perhaps people have underestimated?
The strategy and the intentionality to improve the district. You know, I spoke at an event on Saturday, and you know, when I think of DPS, you know, you go through Boston Edison,
right?
Some of these older communities, you see these historic homes that are beautiful in architecture, but they're run down.
Strong vestiges of black middle class too.
Yeah, but I think of DPS was once one of the best urban school districts in the country, and because of disinvestment, politics, white flight, emergency management, it eroded. But it still has great potential. It's still, you look at it and you know it can be better. And I think we have been intentional in revitalizing, renovating the home, but it's still not what it was. And I think it takes time and commitment, problem solving, continuous improvement and investment and leadership to make that home what it once was. And so what I see different, and I think what people recognize, is the intentionality behind the reform and things getting better. I think people forget through progress where we started. And they should have a sense of urgency and impatience to move now.
Yeah.
But you know, let's talk about literacy, for example. Anyone argues that literacy improvement is going to go from 0 to 100 in a year has never taught literacy, has never actually been in the classroom and worked with struggling readers. It doesn't mean that you're creating an excuse, it just means that's the fact. But we can use things like literacy as political footballs to divide people and confuse people, and use test scores to confuse people. But at the end of the day, improvement is being made, and it needs to be consistent, incremental, and consistent, and I think we're going to do that.
I mean, do you think that people are unjustifiably impatient?
No.
For progress
no,
within the district?
I have no issue, whether it's a community member, whether it's a parent, that pushes for more improvement. I think it has to be understood through problem solving, understanding, and contribution to the solution. I don't have patience for people that are on the sidelines that use test scores as a way to devalue the reform that's already happened. No one's saying that we've arrived or we should have a parade, but you have to acknowledge improvement and not lie about that either. But I don't take exception to saying we need to do better and our kids need to do better. Absolutely, but it also has to be in the context of where we came from and the challenges that currently exist.
Do you feel that we're arriving at a point where even the use of test scores has to be revisited?
I think there's a role for test scores.
Where it is set up as perhaps the singular most dominant metric to determine, a child's skill.
I think if it's viewed in a framework of growth,
okay,
I'm comfortable with it. And incremental growth moving to at and above grade level performance. Because a test in and of itself is not going to define intelligence, it's not going to define potential.
It doesn't tell the whole person.
No, but it does give you a snapshot of how students are doing and if they're improving. And if used the right way, it can also define the academic deficiencies or skills that the students has to provide the right intervention as well. But it shouldn't be an end-all value point regarding the quality of education.
So when you look at the district, let's say 5 years from now, you've indicated you're open to stay longer than when your contract is up in 2 years. When you look at the district 5 to 6 to 7, 8 years from now, where do you see this district? And I ask the question in a national context here because it was seen as the it's the poster child of everything that is wrong with public education.
If you ask,
and all you got to do is just Google DPS.
Yeah, if you ask people that are the experts in urban education, so current superintendents, former superintendents, school board members that have a national view, professors, they will say that we're doing all the right things to improve DPS-CD. And they see signs of it improving. Anyone that's unbiased will tell you that looking the outside in or who have visited the district. So in 5 years, it's just continuing to problem solve, fill the gaps, to be the best, the urban school district that has the greatest improvement and on the rise. And that will be shown on national test scores, on state test scores. I think it also comes with better rates of attendance, chronic absenteeism, better graduation rate, which is already moving in the right direction. But to answer succinctly, in 5 years, if we keep at it, I think nationally people will talk about DPS-CD being the most improved school district in the country. Just like they were talking about Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago, or even New York City public schools. I think we're on that trajectory. We just now, because of the pandemic, we need a little bit more time to demonstrate that.
Let me ask you a final question here. The role of the superintendent, it carries almost similar weight as the mayor, the police chief, and so forth, because you're in charge of basically directing public education in the city. I'm curious though, in terms of what is your greatest fear about the Detroit Public School District right now as it is? Outside of everything that you have told me that you're doing and what the district, what is your greatest fear?
A number of them. School board elections. I think if the wrong school board members are elected, we could regress in the progress. Being a school board is very hard. Being an elected official is hard because you have to pay attention to the loudest voices. But the loudest voices are not always the problem solvers. They're not always practical in how you incrementally improve a district. Board members can be swayed by unions heavily. They can be swayed by other politicians, elected officials. They can grab at the hot topic of the day and not seek to problem solve and be professional. It's very easy for an elected official to disagree with me or another member and run the Channel 4 and be the top story because you disagree. That's what worries me. The other thing that worries me is just the overall lack of engagement. People, because DPS was so dysfunctional and so political, people stayed away. They just, I'm not going to touch that. And that leads to lack of accountability. It also leads to good board members not wanting to run and potential board members not wanting to run because it's a hard, it's not a very thankful position to have.
Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Nikolai Vitti.
Thank you.
All right. Superintendent of the Detroit Public Schools Community District, on the state of the district, the state of public education in America. And of course, we'll be right back after this break on homelessness, something that is so important. Dr. Chad Audi from the Detroit Rescue Mission Ministries is here to talk to us. We'll be right back.